I used to do a lot of messed up things in story-based games, mostly out of curiosity. At least, I think I did that out of curiosity. One of my earliest memories comes from Knights of the Old Republic 1, which, being a Star Wars game, had light side and a dark side paths. It doesn't diverge until late into the game, but when it does, it diverges hard. You force a Wookiee to kill their life mate, and basically turn the leading ladies into a weapon for you to wield. You still fight your way through the same boss that you would in a light side run, but instead of stopping a threat, you're there to bring about a change in management. I found that kind of messed up and ultimately did that because I was curious. I also did an entire playthrough of Mass Effect 2's Shepard Dies ending, where you screw up at every possible opportunity up to and including not handling your team's issues, failing to handle interpersonal conflict because I didn't fully fill up the Renegade or Paragon meter, and then assign people to the wrong tasks, which was harder than it sounded because Miranda was apparently impossible to kill unless she was the last before Shepard to die. But I mean, those runs were not usually the first things I would do in an RPG. The first run was always, how would I do it if I were the player character and in that universe with those experiences? And the second one was the perfect run, after I went online and checked out what I had missed. And generally, the run I kept in my head as my canon run, quote-unquote. Anything beyond those two runs was largely experimental, to push at the game and see what else it was prepared to handle for me and find out everything it had to offer. Which is a good segue into the one evil run I am absolutely sure I would never do, though I am tremendously happy that it exists. Undertale's No Mercy Run. So for the uninitiated, the No Mercy Run is when you go out of your way to kill every monster that you can find, or up to a certain number of monsters, or kill key monsters and a whole bunch of other ones. The details are, for reasons that will slowly become obvious, blurry to me. Look, I have a great appreciation for alternate routes in story-heavy games. The effort is tremendous, and it makes it feel like your choices actually matter beyond getting a different shade of story. Instead, you're getting an entirely different story. Baldur's Gate 3 is one of the more recent performers here, with an entirely unique player character in The Dark Urge. I haven't done that one yet, but that one's a matter of not having enough time, as opposed to choosing not to. Also, I was waiting for the updates to finish, which happened a few months ago. Anyway, one of the reasons I won't do that No Mercy run is because I think it would make me feel terrible. Not just because I love the characters, which is also true in other games where I can become the source of all horror, but because Undertale has lasting consequences for choosing No Mercy. If you do a No Mercy run, everything from that moment forward is tainted forever. You can try to pull a true pacifist run afterwards, but you're not the only one who carries knowledge of what you did forward. The game remembers, and will take your happy ending away from you after you've quote-unquote earned it. Now, there's some confusion or debate about who you are in Undertale, but I think the important thing is that even just reading about the No Mercy route makes me feel bad. I do know how to undo it, but doing so proves the game's No Mercy story right, and that I hold myself above consequences, at least relative to Undertale. It involves, I think, just deleting your save outright so you can start quote-unquote fresh. Which also feels bad, because doing that to remove the consequences feels like I'm doing so in a way that isn't playing the game, literally. I am cheating in a sense, working beyond the boundaries set. Additionally, I came into Undertale late, knowing fully what the No Mercy run entailed and what the consequences are, so I never really got a clean experience. My curiosity didn't drag me into strange and terrible experiences, which I guess means in a world where I didn't know those consequences existed, there's a non-zero chance that I would have done it, which I think is not a worse world, but I think I could have learned a few things about myself, which is one of the reasons why I'm happy No Mercy exists at all, and on such a severe level. I like that No Mercy exists because it is something uncomfortable. It is a controlled space where you end up exploring a part of yourself that you may have never looked at, if you wanted to look anyway. You remember those old shows, Goosebumps or Are You Afraid of the Dark? I never got to watch most of the shows, but I did get to read a lot of the books, and I had a lot of fun with them too, kind of, and they inspired me to write fiction, for a little bit at least. Besides inspiring me to attempt a career mired in poverty, those old stories were also apparently very healthy for me. They supposedly allowed me to experience fear in a controlled space or setting, allowing me to explore that emotion in a situation I could just leave if it became too much, or return to if I wanted to in the future. Depending on the intensity of the horror, it could also apparently have helped me process more intense emotions such as loneliness or grief. And I only say apparently Because while it can work that way, I have no idea if it did work that way for me. Or if I read those just because I liked reading. Well, maybe they did because I ain't struggling with loneliness or grief, I'm winning at them. I think that's a similar space to what I believe No Mercy runs and other darker moments in video games give. Of course, the experience itself is fundamentally different from what I just described vis-a-vis Goosebumps. You're not a viewer in the horror or darkness, but the participant, a willing participant, often the primary instigator of those experiences. All that said, it's still a controlled experience, one that I think could be invaluable for self-exploration and reflection. Additionally, even for those who don't use it as a mirror to their soul, it might just be fun to do, so I'm happy for those people who just enjoy that kind of stuff too. Additionally, darker routes or options in games allow storytellers and players to explore themes that would naturally be outside the realm of a quote-unquote good route, which is fun of itself. That all aside, exploring things like No Mercy or horror can also give you a little bit of inspiration on how to deal with those emotions. Or at least that's how I consciously used it every now and then. It can be a place to experiment with those emotions and see how you can deal with them. It gives space for your aggression, for your anger, for your curiosity, with consequences that are limited to the game. Exploring those spaces helps you draw a line of what is okay with you and what you enjoy. In Undertale's case, it leaves a lingering consequence depending on, what a player does. And I enjoy that idea tremendously. Having the opportunity to explore parts of myself that I may have never had access to otherwise is amazing. And while I may never touch No Mercy because I know it is something beyond what I'm comfortable exploring, I am happy that the avenue exists for those to enjoy it. I don't know if that's what Toby Fox meant to offer with that route, but I think it's a valid ways to experience things like this. That all said, I do think it is important to acknowledge that not all people may be looking for that kind of experience in gaming, or at all, or at the moment. Apathy is the killer of meaningful stories, and thus if a player cannot summon emotion for whatever reason, whether it's because the aesthetics or writing simply do not appeal to them, or because they're just looking for a challenge, or are unable for whatever reason commit to the vulnerability required to complete the conversation that is a video game's story, the No Mercy path will simply not work for them as a controlled space for emotional journeying, which is fine. I don't think they're playing Undertale wrong, but I do think they're ultimately playing the wrong game. Also, there are sense simulators for those people who just want the fight and the excitement of it, so there's that. I did also consider talking about Deltarune's weird route, because it does promise to be a horrifying and grounded experience that challenges how many layers of abstraction a person needs before it becomes less than real, but that story is not done yet, so I did not want to say whether or not I would play it eventually or even blind. Suffice to say, I am, for now, avoiding it because it is a little too real for me. But man, I appreciate that it feels real and a bit terrifying. More so than even the idea of No Mercy in some ways. On an actual final note, I think it's nice that even in the true pacifist run, in Undertale, it lets you experience grief and sadness in a controlled space, and not just that, but an approximation or abstraction of what it takes to be kind, and just choosing that in the face of aggression or confusion, and fighting anyway when there's no choice, and choosing mercy when you can. Thanks for watching.